The package arrived at the Montana Historical Society on a Tuesday morning in March. No return address. Inside, wrapped in brittle newspaper from 1978, sat 3 cassette tapes and a handwritten note. Found these in my uncle's estate. He worked security at Clearview Ranch in the 70s. Thought someone should hear them. The archivist who first played the tapes reported feeling dizzy halfway through the second recording. She had to leave the room twice. What she heard on those tapes would reshape everything historians thought they knew about one of Montana's most peculiar properties. Clearview Ranch sits 40 miles southeast of Great Falls, Montana, spread across 8,000 acres of rolling grassland and weathered buttes. The property takes its name from the crystalline air that sweeps down from the Rocky Mountain front, creating visibility that can stretch for 100 miles on clear days. Native peoples avoided this particular stretch of prairie for centuries. The Blackfeet called it the place where earth breathes, and their oral histories speak of strange lights dancing above the grass and voices carried on winds that blow from no apparent source. Joseph Crowfeather, a Blackfeet elder interviewed in 1952, told anthropologists about his grandfather's experience on that land. He was hunting elk in the winter of 1854, followed tracks onto what you now call Clearview. The elk tracks, they went in circles, perfect circles in the snow. No elk at the center, just the tracks going round and round. My grandfather, he left immediately, said the land was speaking, but not to us. Some places aren't meant for people, that's one of them. The archaeological record supports this avoidance. While Native American artifacts are common throughout the region, the Clearview property shows a conspicuous absence of permanent settlements or even temporary camps. The few items found date to brief passages through the area, never extended stays. A survey, conducted in 1967, uncovered a series of stone markers along what would have been the property's boundaries, each carved with symbols that local tribes claim are warnings, though the exact translation remains disputed. White settlers first claimed the land in 1889. James and Margaret Thornton built a modest homestead near what would later become the ranch's eastern boundary. Their letters to relatives back east paint a picture of harsh winters and scorching summers, of wolves that howled too close to the house, and storms that seemed to last for weeks. But between complaints about the weather and the isolation, Margaret's correspondence contains oddities. She writes of finding her chickens arranged in perfect circles in the yard, all facing outward, completely motionless but alive. She mentions her husband's increasing reluctance to work the northern pastures after dark. In her final letter, dated November 1891, she describes tremendous sounds from beneath the earth, like trains running where no tracks have been laid. Her sister Sarah preserved these letters, later donating them to the Nebraska State Historical Society. One passage, dated August 1891, stands out for its disturbing clarity. James won't speak of what he saw near the old buffalo wallow. He came back white as winter snow, wouldn't eat for 2 days, just sat staring at the wall. When he finally talked, all he said was, "The ground opened, but nothing came out. Something went in. I don't know what he means, and I'm afraid to ask." The Thorntons abandoned their homestead that winter. They left everything behind, including furniture, tools, and a half-finished quilt still stretched on its frame. Neighbors found their home exactly as they'd left it, with one exception. Every mirror in the house had been carefully removed and buried face down in the yard. A search of county records shows they relocated to Oregon, where James worked as a lumber mill foreman until his death in 1899. He never spoke publicly about their time in Montana. The land's next occupant was a German immigrant named Klaus Zimmermann, who attempted to establish a sheep ranch in 1895. His tenure lasted exactly 43 days. The Great Falls Tribune reported his hasty departure, noting that he arrived at the land office in a state of considerable agitation, demanding to break his lease. When asked why, he reportedly said, "The sheep know. They know what moves under the ground. They scream at night. Sheep should not scream. Zimmerman's sheep were found scattered across 3 counties. Most were unharmed but refused to be herded back to the property. Local ranchers who helped round them up reported that the animals would panic when driven toward Clearview, breaking through fences rather than set foot on the land again. Several of the recovered sheep had strange marks on their wool, patterns that looked almost like writing but in no recognizable script. For 20 years, the land remained empty. Local ranchers grazed cattle on its edges, but never ventured deep into the property. They spoke in hushed tones about animals that went missing near the old Thornton place, about the way compasses spun wildly in certain spots, about the nights when the aurora borealis appeared too far south and moved in patterns that defied explanation. Samuel Morrison, whose family ranched the adjacent property, kept a detailed journal from 1901 to 1909. His entries regarding Clearview paint a picture of mounting unease. April 12, 1903, lost 6 head near the boundary again. Found them 3 days later, 20 miles north. How they crossed the river remains a mystery. They were bone thin, like they hadn't eaten in weeks, but the grass where we found them was lush. Another entry, from September 1905, is more disturbing. Saw lights again last night. Not on the ground, under it, like lanterns beneath ice, moving in lines. Told myself it was marsh gas, but marsh gas don't move with purpose. In 1911, copper magnate Harrison Clearview purchased the entire parcel. He'd made his fortune in Butte's mines, but dreamed of building a cattle empire that would rival anything in Texas. Clearview brought in prize breeding stock from Scotland, hired the best ranch hands money could buy, and constructed a sprawling compound of buildings near the property's center. For a time, his vision seemed destined for success. The ranch produced exceptional cattle, and Clearview's innovative breeding program drew attention from agricultural journals across the country. His personal papers, discovered in a Denver bank vault in 1987, reveal a man increasingly obsessed with what he called the inconsistencies of his property. He hired a photographer to document the ranch operations, but the images that survive show disturbing anomalies, shadows that fall in impossible directions, blurred areas where the film seems to have been exposed to intense heat or radiation. In one photograph, dated June 1913, the background shows what appears to be a structure that doesn't match any building on the ranch's blueprints. Clearview's foreman during this period was a former cavalry officer named Robert Haskins. His personal effects, donated to the Montana Historical Society by his descendants, include a leather-bound notebook filled with meticulous observations. May 3, 1914. Fence posts in Section 12 pulled up again, arranged in a star pattern. No tracks, human or animal. Ground undisturbed except where posts were removed. Another entry reads, July 19, 1914, bulls refused to enter North Pasture, had to drag them. Once inside, they stood in a group, all facing the same direction, looking at nothing I could see, wouldn't move for 6 hours. But success at Clearview came with a price. Ranch hands rarely lasted more than a single season. They complained of equipment that worked perfectly one day and failed catastrophically the next. Gates found open that had been secured with multiple locks. Cattle discovered in pastures where they couldn't possibly have wandered. And always the sounds from underground, especially during the spring months when melting snow saturated the earth. One ranch hand, Miguel Vasquez, wrote letters to his wife in Texas that survived in family archives. This place, mi amor, it watches us. I know how that sounds, but I feel eyes on me always. Yesterday I was mending fence alone, heard someone call my name, turned around, nobody there, but the grass was pressed down like someone had been standing right behind me. The other men feel it too. We don't talk about it, but we all work in pairs now. Nobody goes out alone. Clearview himself began keeping detailed logs of these incidents. His journals, discovered decades later in a Denver archive, reveal a methodical attempt to find patterns in the chaos. He noted that disturbances peaked during new moons and seemed to concentrate in 3 specific areas of the ranch. He hired surveyors to map underground water sources, thinking perhaps natural springs or caves might explain the phenomena. The surveyors found nothing unusual, though 2 of them refused to complete their work after what they described as profound unease in the northwestern quadrant. One surveyor, Thomas Ashford, later wrote about his experience in a letter to his brother. The instruments went mad near what they call the boneyard. Magnetic north shifted by degrees while I watched. The theodolite showed elevations that were impossible, like the land was higher than it appeared. When I tried to take measurements near the old buffalo wallow, my chainman collapsed. Said he heard voices under his feet, telling him things he didn't want to know. We left our equipment and never went back. The ranch's reputation grew more peculiar with each passing year. In 1924, a team from the University of Chicago arrived to study what they called geomagnetic anomalies on the property. Their research ended abruptly when their lead scientist, Dr. Robert Mansfield, suffered what colleagues described as a complete nervous breakdown. He was found one morning sitting in the middle of a pasture, meticulously drawing symbols in the dirt. When asked what he was doing, he replied that he was answering. He never elaborated on what question he thought he'd been asked. The team's notes, preserved in university archives, describe increasingly strange events. Day 12. Instrumentation continues to malfunction in predictable patterns. The failures follow a mathematical sequence we cannot explain. Day 18. Dr. Mansfield claims to have decoded signals in the electromagnetic interference. He will not share his findings. Day 23. Found our camp rearranged during the night. Everything moved exactly 6 inches to the northeast. We were all present. No one saw or heard anything. A graduate student on the expedition, Eleanor Blackwood, kept a personal diary that her family donated to researchers in 1999. Her entries grow increasingly frantic. The land here is wrong. Not evil exactly, but wrong for human occupancy. It's like we're in a room where the furniture is sized for giants, and we keep bumping into things we can't see. Dr. Tentilend. Mansfield thinks he understands, but understanding has driven him mad. I fear we're all following him down that path. Clearview died in 1933, leaving the ranch to his son William. The younger Clearview had no interest in cattle or the mysteries that plagued the property. He leased the land to neighboring ranchers and moved to California. For 15 years, the ranch operated quietly, though lessees reported the same peculiarities that had troubled previous occupants. Tools disappeared and reappeared in impossible locations. Perfectly healthy cattle dropped dead without warning, their bodies showing no signs of disease or injury, and on certain nights, the entire property seemed to hum with an energy that made the air itself feel alive. During World War II, the Army briefly considered the ranch as a training facility. The site evaluation team spent 3 days on the property before recommending against it. Their report, declassified in 1975, cites persistent equipment failures and negative psychological effects on personnel. A handwritten note in the margin, apparently added by a superior officer, reads simply, "Under no circumstances." Lieutenant Colonel James Reeves, who led the evaluation team, wrote a private memoir published after his death. His chapter on Clearview Ranch stands out for its uncharacteristic emotion. "I've seen combat in 2 wars. I've watched men die in ways that haunt me still. But those 3 days at Clearview Ranch disturbed me more than any battlefield. It's not that anything attacked us. It's that the place itself seemed to be evaluating us, testing us, finding us wanting. My men, hardened soldiers all, asked to leave after the first night. I should have listened." The first tape begins with a man identifying himself as Dale Hutchinson, night security supervisor for Clearview Ranch Limited. The date is September 15, 1976. His voice is steady but tired. the voice of someone documenting something he's seen too many times to be shocked by anymore. Another incident in Sector 7 tonight. Found all 6 gates open again, chains cut clean through, no tool marks. Security cameras showed nothing, just like always. The weird part is the grass inside the paddock. It's all bent down in a spiral pattern, must be 40 feet across. Looks like something heavy sat there, but there's no depression in the ground. Just the grass, all pressed down in this perfect spiral. Hutchinson's personnel file, obtained through a Freedom of Information request, shows an exemplary record. 20 years in the Air Force, including service in Vietnam. Commendations for attention to detail and reliability. Not the sort of man given to flights of fancy. His decision to document the strange events at Clearview seems driven by professional habit rather than any desire for attention. His recordings span 3 years. He documents hundreds of incidents with the methodical precision of a good security officer. Cattle found in locked buildings, fence posts pulled from the ground and replanted upside down, strange lights that hover over the property but never appear on camera. His logs paint a picture of a ranch where the normal rules of cause and effect seem negotiable. On November 2, 1976, Hutchinson recorded an extended entry. Management brought in a specialist tonight, Dr. Karen Obergfell from Stanford, physicist, I think. She set up all kinds of equipment in the main barn. Magnetometers, spectrum analyzers, things I don't recognize. She was excited at first, said the readings were unprecedented. Then around midnight, all her equipment started showing the same number, 11.7. Every device, no matter what it was measuring. She went pale, started packing up, wouldn't explain, just kept saying, "That's not possible," over and over. She was gone by morning. The second incident Hutchinson describes in detail occurred in March 1977. A late-season blizzard had trapped most of the ranch staff in the main compound. Hutchinson was making his rounds when he noticed something odd about the snow in the north pasture. Tracks everywhere, but they don't make sense. They start in the middle of the field, no trail leading to them, like something just appeared there. They're not cattle tracks, not horse, not human. 3-toed, maybe 18 inches long, they circle the water tank 7 times, then just stop. Snow's undisturbed beyond that point. He followed those tracks for an hour, he says, until they led him to a section of fence where 17 posts had been pulled from the frozen ground and laid out in a pattern he couldn't decipher. The wire was intact, carefully coiled beside each post. The temperature that night reached -20. The ground was frozen solid, yet something had extracted those posts without breaking them, without tearing the wire, and arranged them with purposeful precision. 3 days later, Hutchinson made another discovery. The fence posts are back in the ground, same positions as before. I marked them after the incident, little scratches on the wood. Same posts, same spots. But here's the thing that's got me spooked. The ground's still frozen, has been all week. No thaw, no way to dig post holes. They're just back, like they never left. And the wire's strung perfect, tension exactly what it should be. I've been doing this job 3 years. I'm starting to think the job is doing me. The ranch's regular workers had their own experiences. Maria Gonzalez, who cooked for the crew for 11 years, told Hutchinson about the morning she arrived to find every pot and pan in the kitchen stacked in a single tower that reached from floor to ceiling. The construction was so precise, so perfectly balanced, that it took 3 men an hour to dismantle it safely. No one could explain how it had been built in the first place. The kitchen doors had been locked, the windows were secure, yet someone or something had spent considerable time creating this impossible sculpture. In a follow-up interview, Gonzalez revealed more disturbing details. It wasn't just that one time. Little things happened every day. I'd season a pot of stew, turn around, turn back, and it would taste different. Not bad, just different, like someone had added spices I didn't recognize. Once I found all my knives arranged on the counter, pointing at the door. Another time, every egg in the refrigerator had been hard-boiled, still in their shells, but cooked solid. How do you do that without taking them out? Tom Bradley, the ranch foreman, reported his own encounter to Hutchinson in May 1978. He'd been checking on pregnant cows in the calving barn when he heard what he described as singing, but not human singing. The sound seemed to come from the hayloft. When he climbed the ladder to investigate, he found the hay bales rearranged to form a corridor leading to the back wall. At the end of this corridor, pressed into the wooden wall, were handprints, dozens of them at different heights, some child-sized, others enormous. The wood around each print was slightly charred, as if the hands that made them had been burning hot. The worst part, Bradley told Hutchinson, was that some of the prints were fresh, still warm to the touch. But I'd been in that barn all morning. No one else had been up in that loft. No one human, anyway. I counted the prints. 47. All different sizes. Some had too many fingers, some had too few. And right in the center, about 7 feet up, was one that looked almost normal, except it was backward, like someone had pressed their hand through from the other side of the wall. Bradley quit the next week. In his exit interview, recorded by Hutchinson, he said, "I've worked ranches all my life. I've seen weird stuff, lightning that strikes the same spot 3 times, cows that predict storms. But Clearview is different. It's like the land itself is trying to tell us something, only we don't speak the language." Another employee, maintenance supervisor Carl Hendricks, lasted 2 years before what he called the accumulation of impossibilities drove him away. His testimony to Hutchinson included detailed accounts of mechanical interference. Every machine on this ranch develops a personality. The big tractor, it only starts if you whistle Beethoven's Fifth. Sounds crazy, but it's true. The hay baler ties knots that shouldn't hold but do. Found one bale tied with a knot I showed to a Navy buddy. He said it was used on sailing ships 300 years ago. No one uses it now because there are better knots. So how did my baler learn it? Hendricks also described finding messages in his work. I'd tear apart an engine, find the parts arranged inside in ways that spelled out words. Once it was Liston, another time, below, started taking pictures, but they never came out right. The film would develop, but the images showed things that weren't there. Different engines, different parts. Like I was seeing the same spot in another time. The third tape contains Hutchinson's most disturbing account. On August 9, 1978, he responded to an alarm from the equipment shed. Inside, he found every piece of machinery disassembled. Not broken or damaged, but carefully taken apart, with components laid out in neat rows on the floor. Tractors, balers, trucks, all reduced to their constituent parts. The work would have taken a team of mechanics days to complete. The shed had been locked. The alarm system showed no breach until Hutchinson himself opened the door. But here's what really got me, Hutchinson says on the tape. The parts were sorted not by machine, but by function. All the pistons together, all the gears, all the belts, and they were arranged in order of size, smallest to largest. Someone or something had categorized every component of 12 different machines and displayed them like a museum exhibit. Some of the parts were polished. Others had been repaired, fixes for wear I hadn't even noticed. Whoever did this understood these machines better than the people who built them. But it's what he found in the ranch office that made him start recording everything. On the desk sat a manila folder he'd never seen before. Inside were photographs of the ranch taken from angles that didn't make sense. Aerial shots that showed details no plane could capture. Close-ups of cattle with time-stamped dates from years in the future. And at the bottom of the stack, a photo of Hutchinson himself, standing in the office, looking at the very folder he was holding. The timestamp on that photo was 3 minutes in the future, he says, his voice shaking for the first time in all his recordings. I stood there, looking at a picture of myself that hadn't been taken yet, and then I realized I was standing exactly where the photo showed, holding the folder at the same angle. I tried to move, to change the outcome, but my hands wouldn't respond. For 3 minutes, I was locked in place, playing out a scene that had already been photographed. When the time matched the timestamp, I heard a click. No camera visible, just a click, and then I could move again. Hutchinson's research intensified after this incident. He began mapping every strange occurrence, looking for patterns. His notes, found with the tapes, show a mind struggling to impose order on chaos. He identified what he called active zones, where incidents clustered. He tracked correlations with weather patterns, phases of the moon, even solar activity. Some patterns emerged. Events increased during geomagnetic storms. Certain areas of the ranch were active only at specific times of year. But for every pattern he found, 10 incidents defied categorization. His final recording is dated October 31, 1978. His voice has changed. The steady professionalism is gone, replaced by something rawer. I think I understand now. It's not about what we're seeing, it's about what's seeing us. This whole ranch is like a viewing platform and we're the exhibit. The cattle, the buildings, us. We're being studied, catalogued. The incidents aren't random. They're tests, responses to stimuli. And we keep failing because we don't even know what question we're being asked. He describes his final night on the property. How he watched from the security office as every light on the ranch flickered in sequence, creating patterns that reminded him of Morse code but faster, more complex. How the cattle in the east pasture lined up in formations that shifted and changed like some massive, living diagram. How the very air seemed to thicken until breathing became an effort. At 3:17 a.m., everything stopped. The lights, the cattle movements, even the normal night sounds. Complete silence for exactly 4 minutes. Then I heard it. A voice, but not through my ears, inside my head. It didn't speak words, just concepts. Ideas too big for language. I understood for maybe 5 seconds. Saw how small we are, how limited our perception. Then it was gone, and I was left with just the echo of understanding, like trying to remember a dream. But one thing stayed clear. We're not alone here. We never have been. And whatever shares this place with us has been patient for a very long time. The tapes end there. Research confirms that Dale Hutchinson left Montana in November 1978. He relocated to Maine, where he worked as a lighthouse keeper until his death in 1993. He never spoke publicly about his time at Clearview Ranch. His daughter, contacted in 2018, said he was a good father but prone to long silences. He'd stare out at the ocean for hours. Once I asked what he was looking for. He said, "Patterns. There are always patterns if you look long enough." He never explained what he meant. The ranch itself changed hands several times through the 1980s and 90s. Each owner lasted an average of 3 years. Some cited financial difficulties. Others simply said the isolation was too much. But employees during this period reported the same phenomena Hutchinson had documented. Equipment that rearranged itself, cattle that moved in impossible patterns, and always the sensation of being observed by something vast and patient and utterly beyond human comprehension. Janet Caldwell worked as an accountant for the ranch from 1984 to 1987. Her testimony, given to researchers in 2001, adds a new dimension to the Clearview mystery. The numbers never added up right. I don't mean errors. I mean the mathematics itself worked differently on ranch documents. I'd add a column of figures, get one total, add it again, get another. Both would be correct by any method I used to check them. It was like the ranch existed in a place where 2 + 2 could equal 4 or 5, depending on something I couldn't perceive. She described finding ledgers that filled themselves in with future transactions that later proved accurate, receipts that changed dates when she wasn't looking. Once, an entire year's worth of records rearranged themselves chronologically, but in reverse order. I started taking the books home to work on them. They behaved normally off the property, but any work I did had to be redone once I brought them back. The ranch didn't accept external bookkeeping. It had its own way of counting, its own economic reality. In 1992, a documentary crew arrived to film a segment on America's Strangest Places. They lasted 2 days. The footage they managed to salvage shows persistent technical problems. Cameras that film empty rooms while pointed at crowded ones, audio that records conversations no one remembers having. In one disturbing sequence, the boom operator's shadow moves independently of his body, reaching for something off-camera while he stands perfectly still. The crew's sound engineer, Marcus Powell, later gave an interview to a paranormal podcast. "We've filmed in supposedly haunted places all over the world. Most of its suggestion and atmosphere. Clearview was different. The equipment didn't just malfunction, it showed us things. I was monitoring audio from 3 different microphones, and they all picked up the same conversation. 2 people discussing the documentary we were making, describing shots we hadn't filmed yet. One voice sounded like our director. The other wasn't human. Too many overtones, like a chord instead of a note. They were reviewing our work before we'd done it." In 2003, the property was purchased by Axiom Research Corporation, a private company specializing in anomalous phenomena investigation. They fenced the entire perimeter with 12-foot chain link topped with razor wire. They brought in trailers full of monitoring equipment. For 6 months, trucks arrived and departed at all hours. Then, abruptly, they abandoned the site. When county officials investigated, they found the monitoring equipment smashed, the trailers overturned, and every computer hard drive wiped clean. A whistleblower from Axiom, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed details of their research in 2009. "We thought we were prepared. Electromagnetic shielding, redundant systems, protocols for everything. The ranch went through our defenses like they were tissue paper. Not violently, almost playfully. Our most sophisticated sensors would register impossible readings, then display smiley faces. Computer code would rewrite itself to include jokes we didn't understand. Once, every screen in the facility displayed the same message. You are asking the wrong questions." Then they all shut down permanently. The whistleblower described one experiment that produced particularly unsettling results. "We brought in a quantum random number generator, the kind used in physics experiments. True randomness based on quantum mechanics. The moment we turned it on, it stopped being random, started producing sequences that matched pi to 1,000 digits, then numbers we couldn't identify, but that showed clear patterns. Our physicist said it was like the ranch was showing off, demonstrating that even quantum randomness bowed to whatever rules operated there. Today, Clearview Ranch stands empty. The buildings are slowly surrendering to the Montana weather. The fences sag and fall, tumbleweeds collect in the corners of empty corrals. The county maintains nominal ownership, but they've stopped trying to sell it. Too many potential buyers have backed out after visiting the property. They speak of an oppressive atmosphere, of the way shadows fall in directions that don't match the sun, of sounds that seem to come from the earth itself. Local teenagers sometimes dare each other to spend a night on the ranch. Most don't last an hour. Those who do report the same things Hutchinson documented decades ago. Lights with no source, sounds with no origin, the persistent feeling of being part of someone else's experiment. 17-year-old Tyler Morrison, grandson of the rancher who kept journals in the early 1900s, spent 4 hours on the property in 2019. His account, posted on social media before his parents made him take it down, describes an escalating series of encounters. First hour was nothing. We were laughing, making jokes. Then Jake's flashlight started turning on and off in patterns. Not random, like Morse code, but wrong. We tried to leave, but our car wouldn't start. Not dead, just wouldn't start. We were stuck until exactly midnight. Then the engine turned over like nothing was wrong. Morrison's experience included a detail that connects to earlier accounts. Just before the car started, I saw someone in the rearview mirror, standing right behind the car, tall, wearing old-fashioned clothes. When I turned around, nobody there. But the mirror kept showing him. He raised his hand like he was waving goodbye. Then the engine started, and he was gone. My great-great-grandfather's journal mentions a tall man in old clothes. Describes him exactly, but that was over 100 years ago. Dr. Patricia Kellerman, a physicist at Montana State University, has studied the Clearview Ranch phenomena for 15 years. She's measured electromagnetic fields that spike and plummet without cause. She's documented temperature variations that defy thermodynamic principles. She's recorded sounds in frequency ranges that no known animal or geological process can produce. Her conclusion, published in several peer-reviewed journals, is both scientific and unsettling. The evidence suggests that Clearview Ranch represents a location where our normal understanding of physical laws becomes unreliable. Whether this represents an unknown natural phenomenon or something else entirely remains open to speculation. What we can say with certainty is that the ranch continues to generate data that our current scientific models cannot adequately explain. Her most intriguing discovery came in 2017. Using ground-penetrating radar, she detected structures beneath the ranch that shouldn't exist. The readings showed geometric forms at depths of 30 to 50 meters, perfect cubes, spheres, pyramids. The precision is beyond anything natural geology could produce, but core samples from those depths show only normal soil and rock. It's as if the structures exist in the radar data, but not in physical reality. Or perhaps they exist in a way our drilling equipment cannot access. Dr. Kellerman's research has also revealed temporal anomalies on the property. GPS satellites lose and regain signal over the ranch in patterns that suggest time moves differently there. Not dramatically, just a few seconds here and there. But it's consistent. Time flows at one rate outside the property boundaries and another rate inside. The difference is small but measurable. It's as if the ranch exists slightly out of phase with the rest of the world. The most recent documented incident occurred in 2019. A group of storm chasers, following a supercell thunderstorm across Montana, reported their equipment going haywire as they passed the ranch. Their video footage, posted online before they understood what they'd captured, shows something extraordinary. As lightning illuminates the abandoned buildings, shapes become visible in the air above the property. Geometric forms, massive and translucent, turning slowly like some impossible three-dimensional projection. The footage lasts only seconds before their cameras failed, but it was enough to reignite interest in Clearview's mysteries. The storm chaser who captured the footage, Rebecca Hartley, described the experience in a later interview. "I've filmed dozens of storms. I know what lightning looks like, how it behaves." This was different. The bolts weren't random. They were tracing those shapes in the air, outlining them, like the storm was revealing something that's always there but usually invisible. My equipment recorded electromagnetic readings that my professor said were impossible. Not unlikely, impossible. But I have the data. It happened. Analysis of the footage by digital forensics experts confirmed its authenticity while raising more questions. The geometric forms visible in the air appear to be four-dimensional objects passing through three-dimensional space. One mathematician who studied the footage requested anonymity before sharing his conclusions. "What you're seeing is similar to how a sphere passing through a two-dimensional plane would appear to flat beings. These shapes suggest objects existing in higher dimensions, intersecting with our reality. The fact that they're visible at all implies either a thinning of dimensional boundaries or an intentional revelation." Former ranch employees have formed an informal support group that meets annually in Great Falls. They share experiences, compare notes, and try to make sense of what they witnessed. At the 2020 meeting, attendees compiled a list of commonalities in their experiences. Every person reported the sensation of being watched. All experienced equipment malfunctions that seemed purposeful rather than random. Most described dreams after leaving the ranch that felt more like memories of things that hadn't happened yet. Sarah Williams, who worked as a veterinarian for the ranch in the late 1990s, shared a particularly disturbing account. The cattle knew things, not just animal instinct. They knew when equipment would break down, when storms were coming days in advance, when visitors would arrive unexpectedly. I'd find them arranged in patterns that matched constellations, but constellations that aren't visible from Earth. When I researched it, I found they were positioning themselves to match star patterns visible from other points in the solar system. How does a cow know what the sky looks like from Mars? She also described performing necropsies on cattle that died of unexplained causes. No disease, no injury, no poisoning. They just stopped living. But the strange part was their brains. The neural tissue showed patterns of activity post-mortem. Not decay, activity. Like the brain was still processing information after death. I sent samples to a colleague at UC Davis. He said the tissue showed signs of exposure to intense magnetic fields, but fields that would have required equipment the size of a building to generate. The Native American perspective on Clearview Ranch adds another layer to the mystery. Robert Singing Crow, a Blackfeet spiritual leader, agreed to discuss the property in 2018. My people have stories going back generations. The land there is a doorway, but not one that should be opened. Our ancestors learned to leave it alone. They understood that some knowledge comes with a price too high to pay. The white ranchers, they keep trying to understand with their machines and their science. But understanding isn't always wisdom. He shared a particularly relevant legend. Long before any settlers came, a group of young warriors decided to prove their courage by camping on that land. They were gone for one full moon. When they returned, they had aged years in those weeks. They spoke of seeing the world from above and below at once, of meeting their descendants before they were born, of learning things that human minds weren't meant to hold. Within a season, all had died. Not from illness or injury. They simply couldn't bear the weight of what they'd learned. Research into the geological history of the area reveals anomalies that predate human presence. Core samples show magnetic reversals in rock layers that shouldn't exist. Fossil records indicate that certain species appeared and disappeared in this region millions of years before they emerged elsewhere. One paleontologist studying these findings noted, "It's as if this location has always been different. The normal rules of evolution and geology apply everywhere else but bend here. We find fossils of creatures that should be separated by eons lying side by side. Either our understanding of the fossil record is fundamentally flawed, or this place operates under different temporal rules." The nearby town of Fort Benton has its own collection of Clearview stories. The local historical society maintains files of newspaper clippings, personal accounts, and photographs spanning over a century. One recurring theme is the ranch's effect on technology. Telegraph lines in the 1890s carried messages that operators swore they never sent. Early telephone connections picked up conversations that seemed to be occurring in the future. In 1952, a ham radio operator reported receiving transmissions from Clearview Ranch on frequencies that his equipment couldn't possibly detect. Martha Henderson, who served as the area's postmaster from 1960 to 1995, kept detailed records of mail anomalies associated with the ranch. Letters mailed from Clearview would arrive before they were sent. I'd receive an envelope on Monday with a postmark from Wednesday. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but it happened too often, and the contents would reference events that hadn't occurred yet. I started keeping a log. Over 35 years, I documented over 200 instances of temporal mail displacement. She also noted patterns in the correspondence. People who lived on the ranch long enough started writing differently. Their handwriting would change, becoming more precise, almost mechanical. The language shifted too. They'd use words that weren't quite right, like they were translating from another language. One rancher's wife wrote about the temporal garden instead of vegetable garden. Another mentioned probability cattle instead of cattle. When I asked what they meant, they seemed confused, like they hadn't realized they were using different words. Modern satellite imagery of Clearview Ranch reveals additional mysteries. Images taken by different satellites on the same day show variations that shouldn't exist. Buildings appear in different positions. Roads curve in ways that change between photos. One analyst who studied these discrepancies requested that his name not be used. Either multiple satellites are simultaneously malfunctioning in exactly the same way, or the ranch doesn't maintain a consistent physical configuration. Neither explanation fits within our current understanding of reality. In 2021, a team of graduate students from MIT attempted to study the ranch using drones equipped with advanced sensors. Their equipment functioned normally until crossing the property line. Then, as team leader Jennifer Park described, the drones didn't malfunction, they improved, started flying in patterns we hadn't programmed, collecting data we didn't know how to interpret. One drone began transmitting in a format our computers couldn't read. When we finally decoded it, we found it was sending us information about our own equipment, details about the internal workings that weren't in any manual. It was teaching us about our own technology. The team's most unsettling discovery came when they reviewed footage from a thermal imaging camera. We saw heat signatures moving through the abandoned buildings, humanoid shapes, but the temperature readings were impossible. Some registered at absolute zero. Others showed temperatures that would have melted the camera if they were real, but the shapes moved with purpose, like they were going about daily activities. In one building, we recorded what looked like a meeting, 12 heat signatures sitting around a table that didn't exist in visible light. What makes Clearview Ranch particularly intriguing is the consistency of experiences across decades. From the Thorntons' buried mirrors to Hutchinson's methodical documentation to modern electronic interference, the phenomena maintain certain characteristics. They interact with human technology. They respond to human presence. They seem to operate according to rules or patterns, just beyond our ability to decipher. Some researchers have proposed that the ranch sits on a geological anomaly, perhaps a unique mineral deposit that creates electromagnetic effects. Others suggest a more exotic explanation involving parallel dimensions or temporal distortions. The Blackfeet elders, when asked about the property, simply nod knowingly and speak of places where the world is thin, where other realities press close against our own. Dr. Michael Roth, a theoretical physicist who has studied the ranch data, offers a provocative hypothesis. Imagine reality as a vast computer program and Clearview Ranch as a place where the code is exposed, where the normal user interface breaks down and you can see the underlying programming. The phenomena people experience might be glitches, or they might be features we're not meant to access. Either way, the ranch represents a fundamental challenge to our assumption that reality operates uniformly everywhere. His theory gains support from the mathematical patterns found in ranch phenomena. Events often occur in sequences that match fundamental constants. Cattle arrange themselves in formations that mirror atomic structures. Equipment failures follow probability distributions that shouldn't exist in random systems. As Dr. Roth notes, it's as if the ranch is showing us the mathematical scaffolding that holds reality together. The question is whether we're being educated or warned. The truth is that Clearview Ranch resists simple explanations. It exists as a challenge to our assumption that the world operates according to knowable, predictable laws. It reminds us that there are still places where our careful categories break down, where the impossible becomes routine, where questions multiply faster than answers. The cassette tapes that arrived at the Montana Historical Society have been digitized and preserved. Hutchinson's voice, weary but determined, continues to document the inexplicable. His final words on the recording have become something of a touchstone for those who study anomalous phenomena. "We keep looking for the trick," he says. "The hidden wires, the rational explanation. But maybe that's the real mystery. Maybe there is no trick. Maybe this is just how the universe works in this one spot. and we're too small to understand why. Recent attempts to purchase the property have all failed. In 2022, a technology billionaire offered to buy the ranch for 3 times its assessed value. He withdrew his offer after a single visit, refusing to discuss what changed his mind. His assistant, speaking off the record, said he emerged from the property after 2 hours, pale and shaking. His only comment, "Some things shouldn't be owned." The ranch remains there, 40 miles southeast of Great Falls, waiting. The wind still sings through broken windows. The grass still grows in patterns that make no botanical sense. And on clear nights, when the stars shine with that famous Montana clarity, locals say you can see lights moving across the property, not aircraft, not vehicles, but something else. Something that suggests Clearview Ranch continues to serve whatever purpose it has always served, with or without human witnesses. Whether that purpose will ever be understood remains an open question. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, serving as reminders that our knowledge of the world is far from complete. Or perhaps, as Hutchinson suggested, we simply haven't learned the right questions to ask. Until we do, Clearview Ranch endures as one of those rare places where the impossible isn't just possible, but predictable, where the normal rules politely step aside, and where something watches and waits with patience we can barely comprehend. The Montana Historical Society continues to receive reports about Clearview Ranch. Drivers describe their GPS systems failing at the exact same coordinate every time. Pilots report magnetic compass anomalies when flying over the property. Satellite imagery sometimes shows structures that don't exist on the ground, shadows cast by nothing visible. Each report adds another piece to a puzzle that may never be complete. Recent archaeological investigations have uncovered evidence that the ranch's strangeness extends deep into prehistory. Stone tools found on the property show wear patterns inconsistent with known usage. Pottery shards contain mineral compositions that don't match any local clay sources. One archaeologist, Dr. Ellen Crawford, discovered what appeared to be a ritual site dating back 3,000 years. The arrangement suggested astronomical observations, but the alignments were wrong. They didn't match any celestial objects visible from Earth. Either ancient peoples were remarkably bad at astronomy, or they were tracking something we can't see. The local community has developed an uneasy relationship with the ranch. While it brings occasional tourists and researchers, most residents prefer not to discuss it. Those who grew up in the area share an unspoken understanding. Don't go there alone. Don't go there at night. And if you must go there, don't try to understand what you experience. As one longtime resident put it, "Some folks think we're superstitious or backward, but we've learned to live alongside something we can't explain. That takes its own kind of wisdom." The question remains, what is Clearview Ranch? Is it a window into another reality? A testing ground for intelligences beyond our comprehension? A glitch in the fabric of space-time? Or simply a place where the unlikely becomes likely and the impossible becomes mundane? Each investigation raises more questions than it answers. Each piece of evidence adds to a picture that refuses to come into focus. Perhaps that's the ultimate truth of Clearview Ranch. Not that it harbors some single, explicable secret, but that it represents the limits of human understanding. It stands as proof that our universe is stranger than we imagine, filled with mysteries that our minds may not be equipped to solve. In an age where we believe we've mapped every corner of the earth and explained every phenomenon, Clearview Ranch reminds us that there are still places where our maps fail and our explanations fall short. The ranch waits, patient and eternal, 40 miles southeast of Great Falls. It has outlasted the Thorntons, the Zimmermans, Harrison Clearview, Dale Hutchinson, and dozens of others who tried to understand it. It will outlast us all. And perhaps, in some distant future, when humanity has evolved new ways of perceiving reality, someone will finally understand what Clearview Ranch has been trying to show us all along. Until then, it remains what it has always been, a question without an answer, a mystery without a solution, a place where the impossible is just another Tuesday. What do you think explains the events at Clearview Ranch? Have you experienced places where reality seems to work differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more investigations into the unexplained corners of our world.